Corey, can you start us off?
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be advised that this open meeting is being broadcast live and recorded for playback by WRPS at youtube.com/WRPS Rockland. Please go to WRPSRockland.com for further information. First on the agenda, community announcements. Doug?
Thanks, Mike. I wanted to let the community know we're going to be doing our next fire station building project public outreach meeting tomorrow night, which is Wednesday, March 22nd at 6:30 p.m. at the high school lecture hall. This will likely be our last sort of large formal meeting that'll be recorded and televised by WRPS. So it will be recorded, played back on YouTube for anyone that's not able to make it. We'll try to continue doing some other smaller outreach sessions, and of course the chief and I are always available to answer any questions. But this is a follow-up to our previous public outreach meeting, and we have more details to share. We have a more definitive cost estimate, more definitive tax impacts, some additional design elements, especially exterior design, plantings, landscaping, things like that, which the community might be interested in. So I'd encourage anybody in the public to come, listen, and then most importantly, ask any questions they may have. Again, Wednesday the 22nd, 6:30 p.m. at the high school lecture hall for the proposed fire station project. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Doug. Next on the agenda, minutes from March 7, 2023. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve the minutes of March 7th, 2023.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion in 2 seconds. All those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. Next on the agenda, new business, one-day liquor license request, Veterans Memorial Stadium Adult Egg Hunt event. Allison, come on down.
I'm back.
How are you? That time of year again, huh?
Welcome.
Thank you.
It's going to be an every meeting thing from this point on for the most part?
Maybe.
Pretty much, yeah.
I'm trying to consolidate,
Nope, that's great.
but this one's the more almost eminent one.
Okay, so what do you got for us tonight?
So Barrel House C and Players are planning on serving at our new event, our adult egg hunt at the stadium. I don't know if you guys have heard about it.
You want to go into that a little bit?
What's that?
You want to go into that a little
Yeah.
bit?
So this one is kind of geared towards all the adults. It's 21 plus. Of course, there's going to be a beer garden, food truck, music and such. It's like good old carefree fun. We're going to hide 1,500 black eggs in the stadium. We're going to have a registration. Everybody comes in. It is a pre-registration. We actually sold out twice already, but we bumped it up. We have 19 slots left, and if Jean keeps it at that, it'll stay at that. And then so the egg hunt starts at 7 o'clock sharp. The lights will go out, and everybody will go out into the field and look for these 1,500 eggs. And then we have a bunch of prizes that are connected to a majority of them, ranging anywhere from 10-person wine tasting at Hardwick Winery, duck boats. Many restaurants have given, can't even think of the other things, of course, right now on the spot, but there's a ton of prizes. So it'll be fun, a little adult, carefree fun.
Okay, sounds good. Anybody have any questions, comments, concerns?
No?
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to approve the license for Players Sports Bar and Grill and the license for Barrel House Z.
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? That's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thanks, Allison.
Thanks.
Thanks, Allison.
Okay, next on the agenda, Rent Control Board appointment. Doug?
Thanks, Mike. So we have a request for an appointment to the Rent Control Board as one of the owner's representatives. And I neglected to reach out to this person far enough in advance. She's working in Boston right now, but I did just speak with her, and we can get her by phone on the speakerphone. So if it's okay with you, I do think it's important to have the board fully staffed, so I will call her right now. Hello, Patricia. This is Doug calling from Rockland Town Hall. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, Doug.
Great. So we have you on speakerphone at the Board of Selectmen meeting. I'll turn it over to the chairman, Mike O'Loughlin.
Hi, Patricia. How are you?
Well, how are you, Michael?
I'm doing well. Sorry for I guess, the way that this interview was going to take place. It was kind of a last-minute thing. We tried to get you on, but apparently it didn't work out for it to be in person, so we just thought it was important to have you on board anyway on the phone. So if you just get a second, if you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself and what your interest is in the Rent Control Board.
My interest in Rent Control Board is I have family who work from Hometown America, and I have family who lives in one of their communities. They all speak highly of Hometown America. I became aware that there's an opportunity as an owner representative position, and I have interest. Either the processes are, impacts, just learning different things, and possibly down the road, maybe different career change.
Okay. Patricia, how long have you lived in Rockland?
2009.
Okay. And what do you know specifically, what do you know as far as background that would be relevant to the Rent Control Board?
As far as any background is basically I am an insurance adjuster. I have 35 years experience. I have attended mediation, arbitration. Basically, you listen to all the facts, listen to what's going on. I have that ability to separate everything and analyze everything from the impact.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions for Patricia?
Yeah, I do. How do you feel about the rent for seniors in Rockland being judged by the Consumer Price Index?
I'd have to have a lot more information to determine how I feel about that.
Mm-hmm.
It's a general question. You have to look at what the history of increases has been, and it's a lot of things that go into that. It's a lot of figures that go into that.
Yeah, well, I was just curious because we had an issue, was it 2 years ago now? Maybe it was last year, where the CPI went up because of inflation, but then
Yes.
it's coming back down as the economy changes. But I believe it was voted that it's not going to go by the CPI anymore at Leisure Woods. Is that?
It's being litigated.
It's being litigated. Oh, okay. It's being litigated now. Okay. So, I don't know. I kind of feel that seniors do need a break with the price of everything going up. So the CPI is that system's probably a good system. So.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think there was within the last couple of years, they had a very large increase.
Mm. Well, it went from 2.5% to 5%, I believe, and then.
Well, I'm not sure what it was. I just never did lose alert when the numbers came out.
Yeah.
Okay. So
all
Patricia, you applied for the position, one of the open seats that is as the appointed person to represent the landlord, Hometown America. And you said you found out about this position because you have a family member that works for Hometown America?
I have a couple family members that work for Hometown America. I also have family members that reside at one of their properties.
Okay. Anybody have any other questions, comments, concerns? I'll entertain a motion either way.
Oh, is there anybody else stepping up for the?
So this is specifically for the landlord. So this is
okay.
a person
Okay.
that was put forward by the landlord.
Right, gotcha.
So there's two
Okay.
representatives for the landlord.
Yep.
There's one for Hillcrest, there's one for Leisure Woods,
Yep.
and then there's
Okay.
3 members at large.
Gotcha. Okay.
So it's the members at large positions that we're struggling to get people. So
Gotcha.
at this
Okay.
point, this is somebody that was put forward by the landlord that they are backing. So
Yep.
it's up to us to make the
Okay.
decision. So I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to appoint Patricia Dennehy to the Rent Control Board.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Yep.
Thank you, Patricia. You're all set. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you were just appointed unanimously, and again, thank you for jumping on the phone on short notice.
No problem. Thank you so much. Everyone have a good evening.
Patricia, I'm going to have somebody from the office contact you tomorrow to give you the next steps as to how to get sworn in and stuff like that.
Yes, that's perfect.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Okay. Next on the agenda, proposed town government mission statement. Doug?
So unfortunately, I want to postpone this until our next meeting. There's a number of department heads that were really instrumental in getting this done, and they weren't all able to be here tonight. So if it's okay, I'd like to pass this over until the next meeting on April 4th.
Okay. Okay, next on the agenda, we have sewer update, FY24 budget, rate study, infrastructure improvements, and long-term planning. Chairman Hession, you want to call your meeting into order?
Oh, yes. I'll take motion to open the meeting, so.
Second.
All in favor, Dan?
Yes.
Ms. Fallon?
Yes.
Mr. Hepburn, yes.
Okay, welcome guys to the joint meeting of the boards.
If you could pass these down.
Thank you.
I made this up, it may be a little bit easier. Yeah, I didn't make it up, I'm sorry, I'll email you a copy of this. Add that back to your information.
So the consultant
Oh.
from Wright Pierce should be hopping on the Zoom.
Right, Kevin Olson, our rep from Wright Pierce, is down with influenza A. And the other gentleman who was going to be with us, Matt Johnson from Veolia, had to get down to New Orleans yesterday on a company emergency. So it's been... Kevin with us?
Yeah, it looks like he's just muted.
Do you want me to show the rate study presentation first, Chuck?
Sure, you can do the rate study. That's Matt Johnson from Veolia down in New Orleans. You can go to the rate study if you wish.
Just 1 second while I navigate with our technology.
Give a little background on the rate study while he's looking at it. On last Thursday, the 9th, Weston Sampson presented their draft study to the sewer commissioners and the residents. The presentation outlined hopefully the projected fixed sewer rates over the next 15 years. These rates are necessary to recover from the past losses over the past decade and cover expenses for upkeep, repair, and maintenance, as well as the projected $75 to $80 million required to upgrade the facility and keep it operational. The goal was to build up the upfront reserves, but we all know things are going to change. We know that the revenue inspections are going to change, unlikely to do so in the 5 years. So we're planning on revisiting this in 5 years. I've asked for a addendum to the project to cover, to look it over again in 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, 1 and 3, to make sure we're on track of where we want to be. And what that means to the average, we went up back in January, we went up 25%. We went from 493 a cubic foot to 661 a cubic foot. And as you can see from the study, what we're going to be putting up in one of the slides, and we're going to be projecting a 10% increase over the next 8 years anyway. More than likely that'll change if something happens. That's if everything was status quo. Now what that's going to mean to the average residential user over the next 5 years, of the 10% in their quarterly bill and their yearly bill, for example, FY24 will be $61.50 more a year, FY25 be $67, and by FY28 it'll be $90 a year more than they're currently paying. That's for the yearly rate. Now this rate study took a lot of information into effect. It looked at the facility study, the CWMP, and I want to digress a bit what went into the CWMP. The CWMP, the Comprehensive Wastewater Management Plan, looks at everything. The first step was looking at the facility and what type of equipment, what shape the equipment is in. The next step was they looked at what our flows were, past, present, and they spoke with every department in town, looked at projected population growth, population and development. And they try to lump that all in with our needs and looking at also keeping up with the facility, and that's how they projected that. And it gives us a plan to look at our retained earnings, hopefully cover as much as the upfront expenses that, as we can. And again, I've asked for an amendment, to cover the 1, 3, and 5 year period so we can be updated, so we're not caught behind again. But as you can see, that across the country, they're going up by 6% on an average. We try to balance it to do what we could, but minimize as much as we could to the users, the residents. And we did that looking at a significant number of capital expenses coming up. And plus with what we have to do with the inflow and infiltration. And I think everyone has seen the results of that. Again, this is just a draft. It's going to be looking for more input from people over the next couple of weeks before they finalize it. And the result, might as well go to the, let's see where we are. I think 9 and 11 is the one we were. Okay, the rate study results of the overview. The operation and maintenance are expected to increase about 3% annually. And in the next 10 years, the town department will be spending nearly $9 million a year annually on capital improvements. And that's just mostly on the wastewater facility upgrades. Part of that capital improvements will be done by ARPA, and we're targeting at 15% of the budget for retained earnings. And the urgency to build it up was the project, the upgrade project. Now, if you look at the beginning of that first slide right there, FY '24 and '25, that reflects a 25% increase in January. And if we did nothing after that, that blue line shows you where we would have been. If you could jump ahead, Doug, on that. There's what we are predicting, what Weston Sampson comes up with for our projected 8 years at 10% increase. And hopefully after that, drop down to 7.52 on the end. Again, we're not going to know that until after we get into the upgrade and how long some of this equipment's going to last and what turns up with I&I repairs. And that's with the projected rate increases from the Weston Sampson. As you can see, we're building up that upfront retained earnings to fund the project. And as you go down, it's starting to deplete quicker and quicker as you get towards the end. And basically, that's where we're at right now with the rate study. As I said, at the end of that 8 years, or 5 years, it's probably looking at a $90 increase to the user, the average residential user.
Is that all you want to show on this one?
That's about all. That's really. Let's see. Go to the last slide for a moment. I think it's the last slide. One more time. One more. Right there. The red is where Rockland is currently at our current rates. That red dotted line is the mean for towns of our size. So we're not that far off right now. But we do have a lot of expense coming up. Kevin, Matt, you want to jump? Kevin, you want to jump in with anything on that, or?
No, I did. Yeah, this is Kevin Olson. I would just say that, yeah, the good news is you guys are below those 11 communities average, but, the other news is that you've got some expenses looking at you, so at least you're starting from a good point from a rate standpoint.
You want to go on to the other one?
Yeah, might as well go on to the other one, if you would. Again, that's top left is Matt Johnson from Veolia, and Kevin Olson from Wright Pierce. Kevin, the show's all yours.
Okay, great. Thanks for having both Matt and myself here tonight. I fully intended to be there in person tonight, but I do have the flu, and I'm sure everybody would appreciate me not being there, keeping that at home. So here I am via Zoom. So thank you, Chuck and Doug, for being able to make it happen remote. But yeah, real quick, we have a presentation, a slide deck here. It's a dozen slides. Our intent is to get, pretty much to the point here, and we've plenty of time for question and discussion. So Kevin Olson, as Chuck already mentioned, Wright Pierce, wastewater project manager, been working with the town of Rockland for several years. Matt Johnson, you guys have already met Matt. Matt works for the town's contract operations firm, Veolia. Matt is the director of their capital projects, so he focuses on things like treatment plant upgrades. Rick Katouche, I don't think Rick is with us tonight, but he is your Veolia Rockland project manager. He's on site every day. He just couldn't be with us tonight, and obviously Mr. Hession. So next slide, Doug. So why are we here tonight? Great lead in action. I'm glad you did the sewer rate study first. So as Chuck had mentioned, and Doug flipped through the slides there, the biggest capital expense, yes, flows, capacity, and II are very important in your collection system, but the treatment plant upgrade is the biggest project you guys are staring at right now. So going to touch a little bit on background, some of the drivers, and then get right into the proposed approach, phasing, a little bit on timeline. We don't have a detailed schedule because that's frankly basically still kind of unfolding, and then we'll talk a little bit about funding and financing. So how did we get to this point? A little bit of words on this slide here, but 17 years ago, I believe, Chucky and I have talked quite a bit over the last few years. The town received its first order from EPA, and so things may have happened, and many things may not have happened. So fast forward to just a couple of years ago, where Ray Pierce did work closely with the town to do the comprehensive treatment plant assessment. That was completed just about 2 years ago. Really looked tooth and nail at everything and came up with, where it's still a pretty good plan. It'll get tweaked a little bit, and we'll talk about, how we, thinking it should be broken down into smaller parts. In the fall of 2020, the town did receive its new discharge permit, National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, NIPDES. And the real takeaway there is, that did in fact establish a more stringent total phosphorus limit. Chuck, you've already mentioned the Comprehensive Wastewater Management Plan, the CWMP. We have completed phases 1 and 2. They are with EPA and DEP, and we're working on phase 3 as we speak. And that's going to be wrapped up over the next few months. That will actually conclude with a public hearing, so there'll be an opportunity for folks to listen in and ask questions at that. EPA order, the latest one, was received last summer by the town. It focused on flow capacity, infiltration and inflow, II, and of course our topic for tonight is, in red text there, phosphorus reduction. And both the NIPDES permit and the EPA order have milestone dates to get into, for the town to get into phosphorus compliance, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then last but not least, it's a separate animal here, but Chuck, again, you've already mentioned it, and I think most folks, if not everybody, is aware that there is a flow infiltration inflow issue. So basically that work is ongoing in the collection system right now, and just want to note that this upgrade project at the treatment plant, especially the first phase or contract 1, addresses phosphorus compliance at the treatment plant. Does not work in the collection system. Next slide, Doug. So drivers, phosphorus, clearly that's a nutrient. Phosphorus and nitrogen are the two most important ones out there in the aquatic world. And just real quick, for everybody, the slide on the left, well, that's a healthy, nutrient level. You can see that you've got clear water, and the sun can get down, and the grass can grow, and the flora and fauna can live. Over to the right there, excess nutrients, that's probably from phosphorus. Algal bloom. Algal bloom sucks the dissolved oxygen out, and you don't have a good water quality situation. So that really is the overall driver in making sure that the discharge, in your case, to the French stream and receiving waters downstream, don't get adversely affected by phosphorus in particular. Next slide. So the need for the first treatment plant upgrade project, or you're going to see in a few slides here, we call it contract 1. So I already talked a little bit about phosphorus and what it is. Certainly point discharges like Rockland's treatment plant can be a contributor, but there are other sources, agricultural, runoff, fertilizer, stormwater, but certainly wastewater treatment plants and the regulators' eyes need to do their part, so hence you have that phosphorus limit. You have a pretty strict limit. You can see on that third bullet, your phosphorus limit right now, it's a seasonal limit, so the growing season, April through October, is 0.1 milligrams per liter. That's very low. That is a strict limit, but that is what they deem appropriate for your particular situation. The last bullet there is, the other nutrient, which is not the primary focus of the first phase, but it's very likely that, the town will see a total nitrogen limit that will have to be addressed at some point down the road. Next slide. So the treatment plant upgrades, as part of the 2021 evaluation that we completed, again, we gave the treatment plant a real good scrub, so to speak, and, due to age, flows, we just talked about phosphorus, co-compliance, electrical needs there. I know that, looking at replacing the emergency power generator right now, but, there really hasn't been a major upgrade in over 40 years. And even that upgrade really had a focus on the admin building, laboratory, things like that, with minimal process, system, equipment upgrades. So, things are old, things are getting outdated, and, you can see, one of the bullets down below there that, Rick and your contract operator, Rioli, is even struggling at times to find the, replacement parts to keep things going. But, the real question, one of the questions, I think it's largely been answered, and I think we understand the town's preference. Execute this upgrade as one large project. Our cost estimate in 2021 dollars was about $49 million if you were to just make all the upgrades. A lot has happened over the last couple of years. Inflation, lead times on equipment really affected the cost of everything. Chuck, I think you had mentioned it earlier, but, we also took a look just a couple of months ago, and, in 2023 dollars with, some of the escalation that's been going on, yeah, you're probably in the $70 to $75 million range if you do it as one big project. That's not our recommendation right now, and again, I don't want to speak for the town and Mr. Lapp, but I think smaller projects are preferred right now, and we're going to talk about that. Veolia and Wright Pierce work a lot together on treatment plant upgrades, and we've done it in a design-build approach. We can elaborate a little bit more on that later if we want to, but one of the things that the design-build approach allows is for projects to be expedited to some extent. And once we get into a couple more slides here, we'll see that your compliance schedule, albeit we're trying to negotiate an extension, a design-build approach is a good way to go. Last bullet and last point on this slide is these upgrades, this first upgrade in particular, will not add capacity to the system. Again, it's focused on tertiary phosphorus removal and perhaps some electrical upgrades. Next slide, Deb. Picture's worth 1,000 words. This, is an ortho photo of your plant in Rockland. And you can see that, albeit things may get changed and adjusted a little bit, but we, our first vision on this one, and Matt and I and others, Chuck and the Sewer Commission, our first vision, and, frankly, your permit requires you to do the tertiary phosphorus removal first. So you can see contract 1 there, which is towards the back end of the plant. Contract 2, we think is most important then to go to the head of the plant and deal with the existing headworks, things like grit, screenings, inflow and pumping. Contract 3, at least in our first cut here, would be, working on all of the other equipment and systems that are aging. There is a focus on the secondary treatment system, and as I mentioned earlier, it's quite likely that at some point, some permit cycle, you'll see a numerical total nitrogen limit. So if you're making upgrades for the secondary system, we would keep an eye towards that and really, make some adjustments in the upgrades to deal with nitrogen down the road. Last but not least, contract 4, would probably be focused mostly on solids handling. Next slide. So the proposed approach, and Matt, you can certainly jump in here if I miss something and elaborate either now or when we get to Q&A, but a guaranteed maximum price approach. So that's, again, kind of an approach that Veolia uses quite often, and again, we've worked with Veolia on similar projects and treatment plants just like yours, so we think it makes a lot of sense. In short, advanced design packages. And by design packages, those are plans and specs, right? That's what, us as the engineer would put together working with Veolia and the Sewer Commission. Bring them to the 60% complete level. And then we'd go ahead and prepare, that guaranteed maximum price for each package, present it to the town, adjust things, get your feedback, determine, the phased implementation, make adjustments to the contracts, whatever's needed. And then advance, the individual contract packages to, PE stamps, ready for construction. And at that point, basically then move into construction.
What's helpful about this is that here, actually, if you go back one slide, if you don't mind, is that, one of the things we're focusing on is obviously the tertiary. That is a critical need for the plant and timeline we have. But one of the things that we did early on when we were working with this team was we wanted not to have that one phase, not see the rest of what the plant needs are, where say we're focused on one thing, perhaps we're missing the bigger needs of other plants. So what's unique with this approach is that we're able to look at the plant as a whole see what the different needs are, adjust to it, so that down the road, say we go to, item 3 or item 2, the provisions in contract 1 are not going to hinder or prevent us from doing the proper work in 2 and 3. It's really more of a holistic view on the overall approach to the project, and gives the town, the sewer commission, the ability to pick and select the pieces that make the most sense, and also from a funding standpoint, where the dollar is most attractive or construction furthest. So really, it's a way to really work together to find the best approach while not, missing some of the different pieces or not seeing what the left hand is doing with the right.
That's great, thanks, Matt. Yeah, if you could bump one more, thanks, Doug. So, action items. Well, I don't think that $2.5 million number is probably new to everyone here. I know that we talked about that a little bit, but the town would need to vote and appropriate an initial $2.5 million to cover the cost of the GMP level drawings, as we mentioned. Just a note that there would need to be a second town vote appropriation to take things from 60% to 100% design, and then also for the packages to be finalized and actually get into construction. And of course, construction cost would be the bigger cost, if you compare it to engineering and the like. Couple other really important things. We've already started. We've been working close with Chuck, and I will toot your horn a little bit here, Chuck, and the sewer commissioners, if I could. They've done a lot of things, rate study, working on the treatment plant, working on II, but also looking for money. So the more grant money that we can find for the town, the lower, your local share will be. So that's obviously a good thing. So Wright Pierce, Veolia, we have funding and financing staff on board, and that they really do focus on that specifically. And it's well underway right now. I know that you guys are looking at maybe utilizing some ARPA funding, as well to help fund part of that $2.5 million. But we'll continue to work with the Sewer Commission directly to see what we can do to find any local, state, federal grants. Unlike a lot of years, leading into the last couple of years, there's been a lot of challenges, but in a good way, there is some money out there that's available. Everything's more expensive, but there's money, so we just got to grab as much as we can. Using state revolving funds, we're looking at that. That could be anywhere from 0 to 2, a little over 2%. So that's certainly something that's in play. For sizable projects, it usually does make sense to go down that path. So that's something that we're seriously considering. And the last bullet, I don't think I need to really hit on that, Chuck, because I think you did a good job covering it. But, the rate study lays out a 15-year rate increase, and, that, again, the largest chunk of that would be the treatment plant upgrade.
Well, Kevin, while I have you, I want to make sure that I understand that the SRF funding, the 0% you mentioned, that's providing we do not trip in nutrients, right? Nutrients being phosphorus and nitrogen.
Yep. Yeah, the 0%, that you have to complete a comprehensive wastewater management plan, and you have to meet some other requirements, and I don't want to get into the weeds on that right now, but, there is a 0% option for nutrient-related projects, but there's also a lot of other things that need to go into that. So we've been working over the last couple of years to try and position, do some forward thinking, and try and position the town as best we can to at least give you that option or that opportunity. So we're going to have to vet that out here over the next handful of months. Next slide, Doug. Almost done with slides here. So funding and financing. This really just breaks out the first or initial $2.5 million. Certainly the town's decision, but we've heard that you are considering putting $1 million of your ARPA funding towards that, which would leave the balance of $1.5 million for local funding. And again, we'll continue to do the best we can to try and offset with other grants and loans. And then you can read the last couple of bullets there. So, there's a lot of things that have to be finalized for the construction packages. Again, the first package would be the phosphorus project, because that's what your permit requires. And then certainly prioritize improvements, based on need, budgetary constraints, other competing interests. You guys have a lot more infrastructure in town than just the wastewater, and we understand that. Next slide, Doug. Last slide. So this is just a timeline. I've already hit on a couple of these items. let's jump right to 2023. Again, we're wrapping up the CWMP. Depending on what you, the town, decide to do, contract one for the phosphorus upgrades, we're hoping to start before too long in 2023. We'll see how your town meeting vote goes. Construction, keep moving left to right in 2024, hopefully contract one. The construction would commence, and you can see in 2025, got it in red text, that, probably towards the end, again, we got to finalize the schedule. Certainly will depend on when we start. But contract one completion and hopefully EPA phosphorus compliance. You can see there's 4 bullets down there on the bottom. The first 3 are actually in the NIFTY's permit and or order that the town has from EPA. The first one, February 2023, is come and gone. Nearly completed that work. It actually submitted that early ahead of schedule, so that's done, which is good. February 2024 and February 2025, if you look at those and then look up at the timeline, it gets pretty tight. And, for full transparency here, there's a little bit more time that, in effect, probably is needed. So the last bullet basically tells you that we've already started, working with Chuck and the Sewer Commissioners, discussions with EPA about a time extension. Our goal for the town is to try and get an additional 2 years. If we can get that, then knock on wood, there shouldn't be any problem making compliance. But it's just a little tight the way it's written in the NIFTY's permit and the order right now. Again, that design-build approach with Veolia will help, but we're going to need some more time. Early, nothing cast in stone yet, but nothing in writing. But Chuck, I would say that EPA seems amenable so far to maybe a 2-year extension. So I'll just leave it at that. And I think that's it. So we can certainly open it up for question and discussion. Hopefully it didn't go too long.
Next question. Kevin, I just thought of one thing as I'm looking at your timeline. So we're talking about the $2.5 million for design, again, $1 million from ARPA, assuming that's what the board votes, and then $1.5 million that we would have to borrow with the debt service repaid by the rates that the sewer department collects from its users. I think you said that only gets you through 60% design, if I heard you correctly. So my question though is, so that if the board votes this way tonight, that would be on our town meeting warrant on May 1st for FY24, which is July of 23 through June of 24. So I'm concerned about the timeline where it says 2024 construction commences, because you'll need additional funding to finish design, and we need funding for the construction. And so so that's a lot more than $2.5 million, which is all we've talked about doing for this town meeting. So I'm a little confused about the timeline.
Okay. Yeah, and I guess there could be it comes down to, I guess, what the final schedule looks like. If you were to put up for, the second town meeting vote, let's say in May of 2024, construction wouldn't be able to start or the funding wouldn't be available until July 1st of that year, right, 2024.
Right. So that would work?
It could work, yes, and that you can jump in if you'd like. The other, and I'm not making the decisions here, but, and I don't know what Rockland typically does with special town meetings like in the fall, but I know some communities, depending on timing, Doug, might consider actually, voting additional funding, in a fall special town meeting, but then, again, that's not my decision. But the timing does look like it might be a little off, but I think it could actually work. I don't know, Matt, if you want to elaborate.
No, I mean, to add to that too, Veolia being, we're the world's largest operator of water and wastewater. We have the ability, obviously, to work with the town here. So we need to be a bank for a little while or help, bridge something. That's an opportunity or an option that the town can select if need be. But really, what we're going to do in this first phase here really is just lay out all the needs of the plant, get to a point where the design's been well thought and priced, and then work with the town and sewer board to figure out a path ahead to deal with the phosphorus. We've dealt with this in other locations in equally challenging timelines and have been successful. And as Kevin noted, we are also in parallel chasing the extension. So it's tight, it's aggressive, but it is with a very seasoned team who's dealt with this kind of challenges in the past.
But Matt, I want to make sure that I'm clear on something, that 60% right, that is covered under the 2.5 million. That's 60% of the entire plant design.
Correct.
Okay, so that theoretically would get me through contract 2 design.
Oh, so that's a good question. So I thought the 60% was only for the contract 1 for the phosphorus
No.
Right.
tertiary
No,
treatment.
it's the 2.5 is for design for everything.
For the
It's
entire
for
plant.
contract.
Okay.
It's all 4 pieces. It goes back to what I was trying to say with regarding the holistic view of everything, where we're essentially designing everything to a 60% with prices, and you can basically pick and choose which makes sense, which funding mechanisms make the most sense.
I had to mention that because I saw a few gulps going.
I'm sorry I didn't make that clear, but yeah, hopefully it's clear.
We'll blame it on the flu, Kevin.
I will.
Well, the last point I'll make, and I'll stop, but, and I know you know this, but I just want to say it out loud. In order to be able, for the town to be able to sign a contract for construction, we obviously, the rates have to increase again, and we'd have to have rate history actually receiving those increased fees in order for us to go out to bond to be able to, ensure that we can cover that debt service. So that's why I'm just nervous about construction in 2024, because it's almost like we'd have to double up, or they'd have to double up on the rate increase. But I'm just thinking about it.
Wow.
Yeah,
Right, because you have to cover the cost of construction, right? So,
Well, I thought the rate increase, I thought Weston Sampson looked at that because we gave them the dollars we would need in that timeline.
and you may have, I'm just.
Okay.
I'm just.
No, we gave them
winging
the
this here.
15 million that we would require. At that, matter of fact, that's the sheet I gave out earlier, those are the numbers they're working from, and one would need the money.
We can take a closer look at that too, Doug, and we will. Good question.
What I'd like to do is while it's on everyone's mind with the SSO we just experienced, one of the things we're looking at, although we can't increase our discharge or our capacity, what I've asked them to look at is increasing our holding capacity. One of the main reasons for the SSO is that the plant is just not physically capable of holding more than 6 million gallons of water. So what we're looking at is raising the walls on some of the holding tanks, so to prohibit that from happening again. So we could address that at the hydraulic end of it, which is a contract 2, Matt? The
I believe
hydraulics?
so. Yeah, it was essentially look at the pinch points or the hydraulic, essentially what we can do to help move more flow through the plant to alleviate those concerns down the road. But like I said, these are all things we're going to look at a high level, put price numbers to, and then find buckets and find the best we find mechanisms on how to fund it regarding the different funding opportunities out there.
In all fairness to these guys, I'm throwing a lot at them with different options of what we could do down there.
No, and then hopefully it's something that, we pride ourselves in as unique. This is generally in most, design bid build jobs or how things are handled, it's more of you to kind of almost guess or hope that things go down the path you're having. But this here is unique where we're going to work, ideally work with the town and sewer board here to lay out options and have different opportunities and price points attached to the pros and cons so we can make decisions together for what's best for the town, what's best for the plant, and just, in March in a synchronized fashion. So really, that's something that, it might be a little odd and different now, but as we dive into it, I do see it being a pretty enjoyable process.
Yeah, Chuck, if I could just add on regarding the flows in the SSO, one of the things that the comprehensive wastewater management plan we're looking at right now, actually finishing up our thoughts, and it was actually also required by the EPA order, which we had to adjust the CWMP scope to add a few things, but to look at not only holding flow and equalizing flow, if you will, at the plant, but also in the collection system, we're looking at, inline and offline storage within the collection system to be able to hold and equalize some flow. So there's a number of different ways we're looking at that.
We're also looking at, the possibility of tying in with other communities and offloading to other areas.
So just to translate one thing, the SSO that Chuck's referring to, I believe, is the sewer system
Sewer system
overflow.
overflow, I'm sorry.
Overflow. The last point I'll make, Mike, is just for the board. I did put in your packet our ARPA summary sheet.
Yeah.
So just as a reminder, you have, up until tonight, already committed $1,515,000 for the sewer department. It's $515,000 for the digester boiler replacement, $500,000 for I&I remediation, and $500,000 for the generator replacement. So what we're talking about here is we have just over $1 million left uncommitted in ARPA, so this would essentially use up all the remaining ARPA funds that we have. So I just want to make sure that's good.
Anybody have any questions or comments?
I don't know where to start.
You're the liaison, by all means.
Yeah.
A lot of information.
Yeah, well, I have a lot of questions. Is there a bidding process that you're gonna put out to have someone actually do the construction? And it seems kind of odd to me that the same people that do the CWMP study are gonna actually build the plant and do all that work.
The only thing we're looking at, it's a time constraint that 2025 would never, ever meet it. We're looking at the most expeditious manner. Matt, you may want to jump in
The
on
engineers
that.
aren't going to construct it.
I know.
They're not constructing, no.
Yeah, okay.
No, so it will be big independently
Okay.
shopped after.
All
There's
right.
some aspects where obviously we have preferred agreements and we have, the ability to pull the right partners. And
Okay.
so it'll be transparent and review with you how we're going through the process. Really how this works is that Veolia was procured as through a bid. And this is basically really a means to amend our contract to take on this scope to get into a faster fashion. This is something we do quite often. I know my group is about almost all over $100 million a year in this fashion, which is a pretty well-received, well-recognized way to get capital work done in a quick, efficient manner. And we do it for all different funding sources, from local bonds to SRF to FEMA to what other opportunities are out there. So it is well recognized. It is to the competitive advantage for the town, and it'll make more concrete sense if we dive more into it. I guess I know this is a little bit different, so by all means, any question is a good question.
Okay, so my next question is regarding the SRF. I contacted some people at the state to learn more about it, like last year, and because of the infrastructure plan, the federal infrastructure plan, they have this 5 years of tranches they're going to do to have tons of that money be used up. So you can get a lot more money through SRF now that you can. And Rockland qualifies as a disadvantaged community.
Yeah.
So how that works is they kind of give loan forgiveness instead of a grant through the SRF. So loan forgiveness is the same thing as a grant, but they don't call it that, so they don't have to jump through all the federal hoops as far as that's concerned. They can get the money out quicker that way. So.
No, and we do look to explore these different buckets. And like I said, for example, the first one, given the timeline and the scope of work, what we're seeing now a lot of the SRF funding right now is that they're just starting to roll out BABA, which is Build American, Buy American,
Yeah, right.
where 50% is going to be American made or procured. And for a lot of your electrical gear and things like that, it's proven to be challenging and very expensive. So there's some projects where, by all means, that makes a lot of sense, and some projects where perhaps you're better off trying to find local source dollars for the efficiencies and the buying power.
Yeah.
And these are the kind of, just as we're going to work with you, where, by all means, there's some projects where get the loan forgiveness, but we want to review and find the different buckets, develop the right projects, and chase the best dollars for you.
Yeah, so, well, SRF is definitely not a marathon, or not a sprint, it's a marathon. It takes
Yeah, absolutely.
18 to 24 months to really roll it out. And thinking ahead at your contract 1, 2, 3, and 4, you may want to jump on this right away because the first application for next year starts this July. So,
Yeah, the process of your knowledge, that's
Yeah.
excellent, and you're
Yeah.
absolutely right, it's principal forgiveness that
Yep.
you get that money back, and yeah, in the summer, either July or August is the next time to be able to submit what they
Yeah.
call the project evaluation
Right.
form to try and get on. the intended use plan, for next year, so.
Correct.
You're right, it's gonna come up pretty quick.
Yeah, so, and Rockland does qualify again as a disadvantaged community, so, and let's see. On that note, there's a public comment, period right now, regarding the NIPD's permit that the state has opened. And if residents get on there and kind of bring it on home as to what dire straits we're in with our sewer system, I'm guessing that will help with the SRF process. So I'm just making a comment.
NIPD's went into effect April 1st of this year.
Well, yeah, we still.
But they can still
go-
comment, they still have the
That's what I'm
comment.
saying. I'm talking about commenting to kind of make us look like
Spur the-
we're in
spur the
most-
interest.
like we're most need, because typically, most of the money historically has gone out to oceanside communities, because they have specific challenges. But this can't be a can for us, for Rockland, that gets kicked down the road. So I've been, talking to the governor's office, lieutenant governor's office, and Markey's office about how we can, kind of zhuzh up Rockland a little bit. And that's one of the ways is going online and commenting.
I'm sure the North River Watershed Association's talking to them too now for us.
Yeah, okay. So that's great news to have the rate study done, by the way. It must be a relief to see the ball rolling forward. It's very informative. I read the whole thing, and it was a job well done by Weston and Sampson.
Yes, it was.
I also want to give a shout out to Dave Taylor and Keith Nastasia for having the foresight to launch the rate and CWMP studies in the first place. I just wanted to say that. And my next question is for you, Chuck. One of my responsibilities each week is to comb through the weekly bills each department submits to have paid. And sometimes I find mistakes, and luckily not that often. But I also look for trends. And in the sewer department, I've noticed that in lieu of a super superintendent, you've contracted Veolia to handle project management for the sewer department. And I want to preface this by noting that when Dave Taylor was interim sewer superintendent, he graciously collected $25,000 only per year above his highway superintendent's salary for handling 2 full-time positions. And according to my calculations from the time he left, December 1st, 2023, to last week, Veolia has been paid $29,852.16. So I went to verify that with accounting, and they said, I'm a little off. They said it's actually $61,923.86.
How much?
$61,923.86. So
That's
that
not
could-
true.
that could-
That's not accurate.
well, they have that under. Well, you might want to check with them then. They have it
Oh.
under the superintendent.
I believe the
Right.
project managers,
Mhm.
if I'm correct, it just went out, Sherry, what was it, 10,000?
In that area, yeah,
Somewhere around $8,000 or $10,000 to
Right.
date for the project management.
right.
And that's in
So-
September. Yeah, that's in September.
Yeah.
I have the monthly bills.
Well,
Okay. Well, so do I. That ought to be combed through and looked at, because my point is having superintendents are experts in municipal finance, budgeting, and grant acquisition, right? And it seems like without one, we're missing out on opportunities, because in dealing with several engineering firms at once, they try to sweeten the deal by sourcing grants for us. So, and I understand you have in mind hiring a part-time apprentice superintendent, is that,
No.
no? Okay, I thought I heard in one of your meetings.
We've talked a lot of things about that.
Okay. Oh, it's just kind of chatting about it at this point. Okay, all right. So where are you guys as far as getting a superintendent in?
Well, I'll answer that with a question. Where are you with the searching for the plaster planner? We're in the same boat, no one's applying.
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, I talked to the last 2 superintendents, and they both left because of a toxic work environment and because they were being micromanaged.
Or if you want to bring that up, and here's what I'm going to offer you, since you brought it up. I want to discuss it at an open public meeting with the sewer department and the Board of Selectmen. Open public meeting.
Okay, that's not what this
Okay.
is. Oh, for the.
You and I have been through this. And as far as I'm concerned, you were way out of line bringing that up tonight.
Mhm. Well,
Way out of line. Now, you know as well as I do, there are other reasons that went. If, for example, that CWMP was started before Dave, that was started between John Laughlin and myself back in 2020.
okay.
So I want this conversation to cease, and we will start again, but it's going to be done in open public meeting.
Okay, so I will close by saying this, on that point. My question is, the numbers are just, it seems like there's a waste of money, like money's trickling through your budget. So I just wanted to see
Well, I'll
if-
sit down there,
I
I'll
just-
sit down
may I
with
finish?
you and show you.
May I finish?
I will show you the
May I
project
finish?
management bills, and if you're looking at the overall salary, I think it's to date, if we, as of now, you look at the salary plus the benefits, we'd be paying the superintendent $130,000. I think right now we're saving about 60, Sherry, 50 to 60 at this point, with salary versus. And I will gladly, I'll tell you what, I'm gonna send you the sheet down when I get home tonight.
Sure, okay, and
But I'd like you at the next meeting to ask that question.
Why don't you guys just meet separately with Scott, the town accountant?
No, open public meeting.
so, okay, so I just also wanted to congratulate you guys for agreeing to have a sewer stabilization fund. You know, I remember the challenges that Biz had when she suggested it a couple years ago, and to let residents know, it's a savings for a rainy day account that accumulates and builds interest, so when things come up, then they can be easily paid for. And, you know, actually when Dave left, there was, you know, you guys apparently needed.
Is this on the agenda?
Yeah.
Are you,
Well-
are you deviating from the agenda?
I know
I think it's a violation of the open meeting law. I think it is a violation of the open meeting
No,
law.
Well, she's talking about budgeting right now.
I'm talking
so
about budgeting.
She's just finishing it, just finish it up, Lori, we're going to the next
Okay,
from
I
here.
won't go into that, okay. It all boils down to this. For the needs of the sewer department, this year, our board has okayed, 500,000 for I&I remediation, 500,000 for generator replacement, 515,000 for digester boiler replacement. And all that added with the $1 million tranche you're asking for today, that'll be $2,515,000 out of our total ARPA allocation of $5,114,313. That's nearly half gone to sewer. And I believe that we ought to give you guys that last million because of the EPA order, right? And we need to work together with this, and we need to really keep an eye on any money we can save at this point, because we got some big expenses coming through. That's my point, and that's how it ties it all together. It's not an open meeting law, violation. Okay, and the ARPA is gone after this. What's your game plan from here on out? And what grants do you have in mind to lift the burden off of residents?
I'm leaving that up to Matt, they have a financial analyst, and I'm not. a
Yeah, but
financial analyst.
outside of him, Sherry, you're the finance person on your committee. Do you have any?
So we performed the rate study, which incorporates yearly increases on the residents. That's, as you saw, will build up the retained earnings to pay for this project.
Okay. Well, what about
And
grant,
then
other
what we'd
grants?
like to do is lower that cost of that project through the grants or other sources. of
Indeed.
funding.
And which ones are you looking at currently?
We haven't gotten into that yet.
We haven't gotten that far, that's why we're working with their financial group, to make the
Okay.
recommendations to us.
Okay. And are you looking outside of that? For
Well, I'm
any-
sure they have the resources to tell what outside avenues we have.
Okay.
This is not the first sewer plant they've designed.
Okay. All right. That's all I have.
Okay, anybody else have any questions, comments?
I actually just have one. First of all, thank you very much for all of your hard work over the last season, as well as our presenters. with the EPA indicating that there may be the possibility of a 2-year extension, would that factor into the deadlines? Right now, you had said, we're working on a deadline through 2025. Would that give us the opportunity to add 2 years to your timeline?
Well, we've talked to them about that. It seems, Kevin, jump in if I'm wrong. You still with us? Kevin? We had a conversation with them back in December, January, about extending. This is just one-on-one. We were talking about some conflictions in the extension with the NIFTY's permit and the order. They did seem amenable to possibly a 2-year extension on the phosphorus part. We pushed them a little further, and they're not going to hear it. What the concern we have now is that if we ask them for that extension, and then we get into the construction phase, and through shortages of components, labor, what have you, then we're forced to go back and ask for another extension. I'd rather go as aggressive as we can with the 2025 until we're at a drop dead point before we start asking for extensions, because with the 2 SSOs and our track record of being over, we haven't been in compliance. I think we've been since 2019, 50 months. We've only been in compliance 13 times. That's a 74% non-compliance rate. They've already told us in June that we're going to be fined. Last year, we're going to be fined. I'd rather save any request for extensions till emergencies. Now, Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong. I think if we're going to file an extension, we've got till October.
Yeah, that's pretty much what we talked with Dave Hearn at EPA about, is to about October, yes. And, the 2 years, in the end, EPA will probably ask us for a fairly detailed schedule, and then they may give us 2 years. We're hoping that you can get 2 years so you have a little bit of cushion, but, my hope would be that you get 2 years and we can beat that. Maybe you only need a year extension, but let's get that extra year cushion if we can. But I think between now and October, Chuck, is the timing to officially ask for that extension, and we'll have a better idea on schedule at that point as well.
But it's not just the phosphorus. When you look at it, go ahead, man, I'm sorry.
No, to add to that as well is that what I've seen, because this phosphorus compliance issue is not unique to Rockland, it's really throughout the Northeast, where generally, someone saying I can't set this up as a case-by-case basis when it comes to regulators, but generally they start seeing the general good faith effort to proceed forward and showing movement is more of a conversation. They're usually more willing to work with you. It's just it's a little more challenging from what I've seen is where you're asking for additional time when we haven't really started yet. That's just generally it's like that fine line you gotta kind of thread.
And as you go through this project in the course of 10 years, there's going to be other requests for extensions too, so.
But generally they tend to be, they try to be reasonable, but also they're trying to also make sure that, that these regulations are being met.
Yeah,
and we're also looking at our past record where, from the last AO.
Just to be clear too, Chuck, the only, right now, order that you're under is, in terms of treatment plant upgrade, is for the phosphorus compliance. Right. Is it possible you get other, maybe, but right now that is, priority one with the timeline.
Okay, anybody else have any questions, comments, concerns? I just have a couple. Chuck, how optimistic are you that they'll allow you to increase the holding capacity?
Excuse me?
How optimistic are you that they'll allow you to increase the holding capacity?
I'm sorry, Mike.
How optimistic are you that they'll be willing to allow you to increase the holding capacity at the plant?
Holding capacity, if we can get the walls up there, I don't think there'd be any problem. It's discharge that's our killer.
Yeah, absolutely. But the holding is obviously important.
Holding, I see no reason for not discharging it.
Okay.
And I don't see why, I don't see any regulation that falls under that, as long as you're not discharging that to the stream.
So you're fairly optimistic that if you...
I'm really
brought that,
optimistic.
good. Okay, that's good news.
No, and one of the things we'll be doing too in this process, as well as essentially review low CapEx, mid CapEx, and higher CapEx solutions to these problems. And that's part of what we're going to review with this team here is The ability to increase the flow or to take more flow through more accurately, those are going to be cheap ways of doing it, there's going to be more expensive ways of doing it, and obviously, depending on what the project is, some will make more sense and some won't. We'll have to review that with you along the way.
Okay. Could you just, a quick update on any progress that's been made on I&I?
Excuse me?
Quick update on any progress made on I&I?
The I&I contract was issued to Green Mountain Piping out of Bethel, Vermont. We had a kickoff meeting 2 weeks ago. They will be starting next week or the week after. They're going to be going after manhole ceilings first, so the water levels drop in the pipes. The work is to go from August 1st to the end of, April 1st to the end of August.
And with, obviously there's not any new connections or new development right now. So with that being said, the $500,000 that we gave towards I&I plus whatever funds come from the rate study, do you feel comfortable that you guys will be able to make some impactful headway in reducing the I&I?
I'm not gonna sit here and say yeah, because I tend to doubt it, Mike. I'll be honest with you.
Okay. That's an answer. It's an honest answer.
No, I'm looking at it this way. When you look at your capacity, say 2.50, that's a 12-month rolling average. Our 12-month rolling average as of today is 2.62 million gallons a day. That's 12 months. It hasn't been below that in 20 months. So when you look at a facility, when you're designing a facility, that 2.50 is considering what they call the 100-year storm, what have you. Ideally, Rockland would want to be between 1.8 and 2. That gives you room for I&I and rainy weather. If we remove that, what they're predicting is going to be 119,350 gallons of I&I. Personally, I think it's going to be more with this water level. That's not going to put a dent in it. I mean, right now, we still have four projects that were approved before the moratorium that haven't even connected yet. That's another 22,000 gallons coming in. So if you look at the I&I in that, that's 230,000 gallons that would have to come out. I mean, I don't honestly see anything for a year. I mean, I'm talking anything greater than a 4-bedroom home.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, I just meant as far as closing the gap on the I&I. We're not asking any kind of development at this point. I get that. I've watched your meetings. I know what the message has been.
I mean, we're reaching. I mean,
yeah, I know.
And
you guys are working on it. You guys have been working.
Just so you know, you're comfortable. Since what I want you to know this, I don't think you know yet, or maybe you saw the meeting. We just went up on a
I've watched them. Yep.
Engineering fee and removal fee. And we're charging exactly what it costs the town to remove I&I, $6.61 a gallon. And that's a hefty amount of change the developer's going to have to pay to get that. But we have to have that capacity available before we let them in, or we're just going to be worse off.
And I had seen, and you actually referenced it tonight, you said that you reached out to other communities for capacity. I talked to you, a while back, obviously. Our neighboring community, Abington, might have something for us. Plus, they are sending some
Abington is sending us about approximately, they have a maximum of 110,000 gallons a day they can send us.
So that's a conversation that might be had very soon. I had a good conversation with their chairman of the Board of Selectmen, and he's going to talk to the sewer commissioner, get in touch with you, because there might be some opportunity, because they were given some capacity from Brockton, and what was quoted to me was that they could develop the entire town and they'd still have additional capacity. So there is a potential. There's a potential. So that should be coming sometime in the next week or two.
Because that's good, because Chris Kenny and I are just getting into the Abington Rockland agreement.
Okay, perfect. So
that'd be ideal.
So you might be hearing something very soon.
I'd love to hear from you.
Okay, and then just on another note, obviously, I've watched. I'm not always, on your Zooms, but I watch every single one of you guys' meetings, and I just want to give you guys some credit. You guys have you guys had a lot of meetings, huh? Every time I go on YouTube, I'm like, what the heck, again? Another one that I haven't seen? Yeah, about that. So kudos to you guys on that. And I also just want to thank you guys for establishing the the relationship that you guys have with Doug, as
Doug's
far
been a
as,
big help.
as far as being a resource, and I've appreciated the notes that you've sent over, thanking him for teaming with you guys, and kind of just explaining there's so much things, so many rules that go into the municipal financing end of it, and I think that's what we were hoping to kind of offer by having Doug available for you guys. So, please, continue to use him as a resource as questions come up. He's definitely there for you.
It's like with that stabilization fund, we got hit with the enterprise last year, and none of us understood what the enterprise fund was. So, the enterprise, we didn't understand the stabilization.
Yep.
We could only eat part of this at a time.
I get it, but you guys have been doing a good job, working hard anyway, with that being said. So, nobody has any other questions, comments, or concerns?
I just wanted to say one thing, that just for the public to know, the 80 million to rebuild the plan is separate from I&I, from those costs.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make that clear. So an I&I remediation or
Well, the sewer department
balance
still has, and it's a drop in the bucket.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
All we could allow with the rate study is $200,000 a year.
The I&I, to correct it throughout town, will be many, many years and millions of dollars. To
Well,
do that.
again, one other thing for the town is this high water level has not helped. Everyone knows that the more water pressure you put in, if there's a crack, it's gonna find it. So,
Yeah.
I think the best is yet to come.
Okay, so you guys are looking for $1 million from ARPA
Yes,
tonight.
please.
So I will entertain a motion.
I second, I entertain the motion to.
No, I'm entertaining. What do you got?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Are you gonna make it?
I make
All
the
right.
motion to give the sewer department our $1 million in ARPA funds.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Unanimous.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Residents, thank you very much.
So before Chuck goes, I want to clarify exactly how this will look on the warrant. So, working with town council to draft an article in anticipation of this. So it will authorize the sewer department to borrow up to 1.5 million, which they'll repay from their sewer rates. And then it'll authorize commingling the $1 million of ARPA with that $1.5 million. So that should all be in one town meeting article. And then again, the annual debt service on the $1.5 million will be repaid by the sewer department. And most likely what I think we do is when we get to the next phase of work, where they're going to borrow the next chunk of money, we'll kind of refinance things and lump them all together. But I just want to be clear, it should be one article that will encapsulate this $2.5 million.
Okay, the only thing I would, and I'll talk to you over the phone, but if you could explain to me the other part of that about doubling the rates or something like that.
Yeah, we can talk later. There was just
I'll let them go.
we can talk later. It was just my reaction to the 2024 date, but we might be okay, so we can talk.
Okay,
outside.
but I didn't understand that.
Yeah, that's fine.
Kevin, Matthew, thank you for your time. Appreciate
Kevin,
it.
Matt, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Kevin, feel better.
Good night.
Good night.
Chairman
Thank you.
Eshman,
Thank
you
you.
want to just dissolve your portion of the
Excuse
meeting? You want to just dissolve your meeting?
Motion to
Oh,
adjourn the sewer
I'm
department
deaf,
meeting.
I'm really sorry.
Only when I
Too
talk,
much Stevie Ray Vaughan.
There you go.
Motion to adjourn the sewer department report.
Motion. Okay, do I have a second?
Second,
All in favor, Dan? Jerry?
yes.
Chuck is a yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
I'll catch you guys Thursday night.
Good night. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
One second to get this out of the way.
Okay, next on the agenda, other new business not reasonably anticipated. Doug?
I have none.
Okay. Under old business, FY24 budget. Doug?
So I was hoping that,
We can bring Officer Davidson up if you want to get that out of the way.
yeah,
fast.
well, he's for the
Yeah.
town meeting warrant. He's
Oh,
up,
he's the
yeah, he's
warrant.
up
Okay,
next.
you want to
so-
jump to the warrant and then go
Well,
back to the
I'll be
budget?
super quick.
Okay.
I can get through this first.
Really?
No,
Okay.
I'll be quick.
All right. You and the budget, you're going to be quick? All
I have a
right.
bad reputation.
With the budget only.
All I wanted to highlight was there were two people I was hoping to have at the meeting tonight. Dave Taylor to talk about some of the increases in the tree department, the highway department, and the stormwater department. he's tied up at another meeting that's very important, so he's not able to be here. And then Stacy Callahan, HR Director, because as you know, we're recommending a big increase for training and professional development. She's under the weather, she's not able to be here, so we'll try to get them at the next meeting. The only change in the budget was an extremely minor $1,000 increase to the Historical Commission. Other than that, everything is the same. So that's all I have on the budget.
All right, next on the agenda, May 1st, 2023 town meeting warrant. Doug?
Great. So there's only a few things I want to highlight on the warrant. All I've included in your packet is my draft, and as you can see, it's very rough. There's a number of articles that Town Council and Land Use Council are finalizing. There's only a couple things I want to highlight, and then I'm going to ask the Animal Control Officer to talk a little bit about the proposed changes to the kennel bylaw and the zoning bylaws. So the first change is we're going to move from the annual town meeting to the special town meeting the school department's request for funding to cover their extraordinary special education costs. So that was originally intended to be, here we go, it was initially Article 43 in the annual, which is $250,000 to be funded from free cash. And talking to the superintendent and assistant superintendent, they really need those funds to cover FY23, and that if they can cover some FY23 sped costs with that, that's going to help them greatly capture more state funds in FY24. So I'm going to move that article to the special town meeting. The next thing I want to highlight, and this is pretty significant, I did send you an email. I'm not sure if you've had a chance to see it yet, but Article 13 is the Community Preservation Act article to acquire land on Cary Street, a little over 3 acres. It was requested by the Parks Commissioners to acquire this land for park purposes, to build ball fields, playgrounds, and it would abut other parks land. There's been a lot of back and forth that I've had with the owner and the realtor. Just to cut to the chase, the owner has backed out of the deal. He has changed his mind. He is no longer interested in selling the town the land. There's a lot more to it, which we don't need to get into now. My recommendation will be to keep it on the warrant, just in case he changes his mind again. And presuming that he doesn't, we'll just pass over it at town meeting. But if he has a change of heart, at least we'll have that option. So that is disappointing. We'll see what the future brings. This board has done everything they can to try to acquire it in the best interest of the town. But you need a willing partner in a land transaction like that. The next thing I want to highlight is the last one before Officer Davidson comes up is Article 60, which is requested by the Abington-Rockland Joint Waterworks for enforcement of water restrictions in our general bylaws. As we know, there's a capacity problem, so they do need to implement and enforce restrictions. Their initial request involved creating a new bylaw, but as we did more investigation with them, we realized we do have an existing water restriction bylaw on the books, and it's listed on the town website on the E-code, which Donna knows very well. But in talking to the water superintendent, there are some key provisions in our current bylaw that are missing that they're requesting, specifically enforcement provisions, meaning fines. So we have some suggested language. Again, town council is drafting that. I will have a complete and final draft of the warrant for your next meeting on April 4th. I'll certainly send it out to you ahead of time, so if any of you have any individual questions, you can reach out to me. But we should have a 100% complete warrant with Land Use Council and General Council approving everything.
Crystal will be present, I'm assuming, to speak to the water.
Sure. Yep. Absolutely.
Water questions.
Unless you have any other questions, I thought it'd be helpful to have the Animal Control Officer talk about the 3 articles for the kennel bylaw, which technically is in the zoning bylaws, so there will be a planning board public hearing in late April to go over those changes.
Officer Davidson, welcome.
Hi. All right.
First time.
Yeah.
All right. What do you got for us tonight?
So I guess there's 3 articles, and it's really bringing the bylaw definitions and descriptions more in line with what the state
Starting at Article 72, guys.
Yeah, and I think what's kind of driven this is I got a call from the clerk's office working with the building inspector and the zoning board. Since pandemic, with everybody working from home, there's been a lot more dogs in town. Significant increase. And we have probably close to 4,000 dogs in town that we know of. And with pandemic, people were working from home, they got a new dog, and we've had an increase in numbers of dogs in households. So the kennels, the laws, the state laws and the bylaws help to understand that and restrict that. Currently in Massachusetts, you can have up to 4 dogs in a household, and you license them just as Master General Law states. Vaccinate them and license them. And then once you go to the 5th dog, now you're turning into a kennel. So the 3 bylaw changes really are to more description. So there's really going to be in town 2 types of kennels. There's going to be a personal kennel. So if you've got from 5 to 7 dogs, that's a personal kennel. And then you've got your, what was a commercial kennel, now is a commercial with all those other tag-ons, which is in compliance with what the state writes. And that's to cover all really commercial, you know, the training, the boarding, the veterinarian, all of that stuff. So, and the other thing that's going to help with this is that both of those are going to go through zoning. Right now, there's a way for someone to get a personal kennel without having to go through zoning. And to me, that is difficult because when you think about dogs, and someone's got 4 dogs, that's a lot of dogs, a lot of noise. Start going to more, it's even more. And it's also, so that's the issue of keeping the peace, public tranquility. And then the other piece of it is public health. More dogs, more waste, and all of that. So the idea is that we bring those descriptions in line with the state, and that whichever kennel you're going for, whether it's going to be a personal kennel or it's going to be the commercial with all the other tags, they'll both go through zoning. And that's to help us keep control of that. Right now, we only have 2 commercial kennels in town. They're both well-run, they get inspected every year, there's no issues with them all. We've got 1 resident who's started the process of investigating getting a personal kennel. So that will, if they get it in before the town meeting, they'll fall under the current. And I don't believe that'll go through zoning, but after the town meeting, if this passes, anybody applying for those will have to go through the zoning.
Is there language that specifically says what age the dogs would have to be?
I believe it does say 3 months, I think,
over 3 months?
in the language, yeah.
So anything over 3 months, if they didn't have the zoning approved, then they'd be in violation?
And that's because, so if you've got a
Puppies,
breeder.
absolutely. Yeah,
typically
absolutely.
the puppies are grown,
Yeah.
out the door they go, so.
Okay. All right, anybody have any other questions? Donna, this is one of your favorite topics. Do you remember the last number that you had when you registered dogs when you were the clerk?
I think it's been a long time since the kennel bylaws have been looked at.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter, like I said, it's just a matter of cleaning that up a little bit and really trying to anticipate more people applying for kennels.
Absolutely.
And you think about it, if you got a multifamily home, 3 residents, 3 households, and you got 4 dogs, and now that's a lot of dogs in a house, and that, you start to get them all barking, and there's a real risk for the disturbing of the peace and tranquility, which then flows into law enforcement, and I get called out. So it's going to help with that. It's going to help just to keep it much more organized, and we know where they are and what's going on with them.
Officer Davidson, could you just explain a little bit more about, I'm just a little confused about the concept of a personal kennel.
Yeah. So personal kennel really would fall under more that kind of a breeder, because they're not, those dogs aren't, they're going to have dogs, but they're going to constantly be putting them through the door. Whereas a commercial kennel, like a boarding kennel, when we give them a license, it usually states how many dogs that they can have.
Right.
And they can have up to, 100 dogs. A lot of those are typically daycare, in and out for the day, but they also, some of those do have provisions for boarding, so they can have them overnight. So does that answer your question for that?
It does, thank you.
Okay.
Anybody else have any questions, comments, concerns?
Now, a multifamily house. are they going, will the landlord have to apply for a kennel if there's,
Yeah, so the landlord would be
10 dogs
involved.
in the
I can
house.
tell you, based on zoning, you're not going to see a kennel in a multifamily house. We had a situation where a young gentleman recently was looking to start sort of get his feet going on a boarding kind of daycare thing. And we looked at it and it was like, well, he's trying to do the right thing, but ultimately the building inspector went and said, this doesn't fall under, it's not going to work under zoning. And we have to protect that, right? Because, and he was like, well, it's all family in the building. And I go, well, it's all family in the building now, but what's it going to be 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now? And that can change the dynamics very quickly. So, yeah.
yeah, because I remember we had a gentleman come in and he wanted to start.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't own the property. He was living
Yeah.
with a grandmother or something. And so my question was, is there going to have to be a sign-off for the person who actually owns the
Yeah, so
property?
I believe when they apply for a kennel, zoning and the building inspector want to know who owns the building to make sure that they know what's going on and they're on board with it. So there would have to be a sign off with them as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? Any other questions? Officer Davidson, thank you much.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Good night.
So Mike, if I can, I know you don't have the final language, but just even based on the table of contents, were there any questions that you had about any articles that I could try to answer tonight? I know we've talked about a lot of this stuff in multiple meetings, but I just wanted to give you an opportunity in case there were any questions.
I just want to make sure that we have the people in the room for town meeting that can answer all the questions specifically. I mean, I should have just said it to Officer Davidson, so if he's in attendance, and somebody has a question, he can specifically get up. Like I said about the water articles.
Of course.
Crystal
Yep.
can get up, and that
Yep.
way we don't run into a situation where we did a couple years ago. We didn't anticipate questions on something, and I think we realize now that people aren't afraid to ask a question about anything at this point, so.
Agreed. And Dave
David's
did
here.
make it back, so
Yeah.
if we can go back to the budget for a minute, if that's okay?
We can, if you want to go up, Dave.
Thanks, Dave. And again, Dave, I was hoping you could just touch on tree department, highway department, and stormwater, because we have a couple of those line items with some relatively big increases.
Dave, welcome.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
You want me to just go down my list, what I have?
Yeah, you might as
Go
well.
down it? All right.
Maybe just give them, Dave, like the account, the department number, like 294 for tree, that'll just help them find it.
So I'll start with tree. So you're at Department 294, Tree Department. So the largest item there obviously would be the hired equipment. It's 012945 So that, actually what we're looking to do is increase that from the budgetary item of 30,000 to 50,000. Obviously, we're running into higher prices on all hired equipment right now. So what we try to do is hired equipment would be like a crane service, which the town doesn't have. We have one bucket truck, one chip truck, so we have to obviously put that work out to contractors. We try to keep some of that in the funding through the winter in case we obviously run into a bad winter and we have crane work or larger storms like that October storm a few years ago. So obviously we don't have a crane. Those services have doubled since I've been on. I'm going into year 8. So those services have doubled since I started 8 years ago. So, and we put this out to bid every year. Currently we have a contract with a local company, and they've matched their procurement of last year to carry over this year, so it's still the lowest bid. The other item would be the supplies and clothing. That's 012954. So what we're looking to there is it's a combination. So what I explained at finance, it's a combination of some of the drainage MS4 that we have going on right now, which is equivalent to a NIPG's permit that the sewer has. We run the MS4 stormwater permit through us. So we have to, so a lot of the open catchment areas and also the outfalls, bridges, small bridges like we consider our outfalls. So what we're going to do is this year we hired our drainage tech, Megan, who came over from the accounting department. She's one of the people. They work with the highway department and the tree department, so we try to combine those resources. And we clean, cut brush, There's only so much you can do in those areas with cut brush, tree removal. So we do need specialty items as far as, equipment in regards to that. Certain type of suits, certain type of waders, and upgrade that equipment moving ahead so we can, accomplish all those stormwater issues. So I think those are mainly the items from the tree department, so as far as that goes. Again, just the overall increases in any subcontracting right now, and where we're not, obviously looking for another employee over there right now, so. Let's see. Skip to Highway 421. So Highway 421, the larger items there would be, let's see, machine maintenance is one of the bigger ones. Obviously, you hear me, talking about that a lot. So machine maintenance. So most of the equipment, the smaller items we can repair and maintain ourselves, but larger items, the larger trucks, machine maintenance, we have to subcontract out. We don't have a mechanic on staff right now. We've been talking about that as a town mechanic, town-wide mechanic at some point. So obviously with those services and where our equipment's getting a little older, obviously we needed an increase in that. We've been running that into a negative budget the last few years, so that we're trying to bring that budget up to pay for those items. Let's see, what else? The other one, I guess, with gas, oil, diesel, obviously that's self-explanatory because obviously those prices are still up through the roof.
Did you do the materials and hired equipment too?
Materials, hired equipment, so we've been basing that off of, obviously, it's the same thing, materials and hired equipment, everything is through the roof right now, so we're not getting as much done as we have been, from year 1 to year 5. We're currently in our next 5-year plan. So, to try to parlay, the Chapter 90 isn't really going up significantly. We've been hovering just below 400 since I've been here. So, looking to add on to that, we subcontract quite a bit out. The extra materials, the extra hired equipment to try to keep up with the amount of projects we have. So obviously, the last couple of years has been a little bit of a drop-off since 2020. Obviously, with the COVID, everybody blames that, but the numbers have gone up on materials and hired equipment. Yeah, pretty much, so.
So Dave, when I was on the finance committee, one of the things that we were trying to do at the time was to increase your operating budget by, what was it, like $200,000 per year to get you to a
$500,000.
To $500,000.
Yes.
Do you feel comfortable with the rising costs, across the board, that commitment was satisfied, or do you feel as though you continue to need some kind of agreement?
Well,
with the finance
if you factor in the rising costs and everything, so we're probably still below where we were. If you look back at 8 years ago when I first came on, I approached the selectmen, the finance, and said, listen, I don't want to fill potholes and do tree work. We want to be proactive and try to get a hold of the underground infrastructure, fix everything below, get the roads done. I think we've accomplished a lot as far as curbing, sidewalks. We said we're going into the schools district, start working the main roads, and then branch off into that area there. So, when you start factoring the rising cost, the cost of living and all that, we're probably below that still. So, $500,000 is not $500,000 it was 8 years ago, to be honest. So, but that with the Chapter 90, parlaying with the amount of grants that we've been getting, yes. You know what I mean? We're making strides way above where we were, since year 1. So, trying to think.
The stormwater is probably the last one.
Yeah, stormwater, sorry about that. Snow and ice, we're staying the same.
Yeah, yep. We tried.
Yeah. So stormwater, obviously the same thing. So we're looking at the MS4 stormwater permit. We're in year 5 of that right now. We started that. We took that over from John Laughlin, who was over at sewer, where all this is the new compliances, the new stormwater permitting. The MS4 stormwater is equivalent to the NIPD's permit that's over at the sewer department. So everything that's happening over in the sewer department is also happening in drainage, which you've heard me preach before. This is a major component of the underground infrastructure. You have water, you have sewer, and you also have drainage. So, the same things are failing, the piping, the infrastructure, the manholes, and that's all stuff we're trying to do proactively and still be in compliance of the MS4 stormwater. So, not to be redundant, again, the costs are up. We're trying to get more done with that, try to be proactive. So what's happening in the past is we're using a lot of the highway funding to do the stormwater because there's just not enough funding. So if we're doing a road over, say we're working on, Beach Street, we're taking the funding away from the highway department and we're using it to do the drainage because we're already out of drainage. We're using 50,000 of that just for drainage engineering as part of our compliancy. So again, that's why we're looked for the boost of that $50,000. And obviously we got the approval on the drainage employee last year, which is helping us. We're going to save significantly with that. She's learning the GIS system, which we've implemented about 5 years ago. We started that over at the sewer department as well, and now that is branching out into other departments as well. So I think that's mostly the main
I think so.
upgrades
Yeah, those
we're
are the
going.
highlights.
I don't know if anybody had any questions on that.
Yeah, well, yeah, I do have a question. So at the fire department, they want to make the design for the new fire department, they want to make a mechanics bay. Would
Yep.
that be, like, everybody in town would use that?
Yes.
I think that's
So
been
that would
talked about a
save-
timeline.
Town departments, not anybody in town.
Yeah.
Right, town department, yeah, well, that's what I
It's not a
meant.
selectman benefit?
I'm still in California.
Yes.
I don't know if you want to open that up, Mike.
So, no, but-
I know, it's an election year too.
So
Dave,
I'm glad you brought that up, Lori,
Yeah.
because I was going to make that very point. I mean, you
Right.
can see, in the fire department budget and the highway department budget and the parks department budget and the police department budget, we could definitely save a lot of money.
A ton of money,
A
absolutely.
ton of money.
Right, and they wouldn't be able to do everything, but there's a
Right.
lot of things that the hourly rate would be probably a third of what they're
Yep.
paying for big diesel mechanics for
Right.
the bigger
Right.
vehicles.
Yeah.
So, okay. No other questions.
Any other questions?
Did you want to touch base on the snow and ice at all, or
Hey, wanna-
Sure.
hopefully we're wrapping that up?
Yeah.
So just to go over that, that's, obviously it's a weird budget when you look at it fiscally because we run it into a negative balance. I've never seen it not in a negative balance, so, because literally, I mean, when you start adding all the components
Salting and everything, yeah.
configured in it, obviously the biggest one, we had a lot of smaller storms. We went out 22 times salting, AKA sanding. 22 times, one of those smaller storms where, we didn't have to call in all our contractors or our major plows at all this year. So that, that's a plus. But also, we're salting certain storms in the cold weather are different than what we would do a March storm. A March storm, you just can't get rid of anything on the side roads. So we had to call in, small amount of apparatus just to remove that.
Well, what's funny, I heard some people complaining about you guys being out last week with the plows,
Yeah.
but there was slush all over the ground, and you gotta remove that to salt, and it was surprising just
Yeah.
what the expectation was, I mean, I know it was like 11 o'clock at night, and it didn't appear as though there's much on the ground, but
Yeah.
if you can't salt the slush,
You get 2 inches, roughly 2 inches on one part of town, and then 2.5 inches on another part of town in Rockland. It's a tricky situation. You got elevations at Beach Street and also the north end of Union Street. Everything else is 2 inches. I mean, we were able to keep the main roads open the whole time,
Yep.
which is straight salt, but you do not get the traffic on the side roads, so you have to treat those like you're looking at a large parking lot. I mean, if you're scraping the schools, you're scraping the side roads, and at that point, we have contractual obligations to anybody that we called in. Obviously, we called in like half the amount of apparatus. And the problem is also we have a 4-hour minimum. So if you have them doing the side roads, you want them to hop over, you want them to slush off the main roads, and everybody ran into the same situation. The only good thing on us is we only paid those for 4 hours. If you look up what the state called in, the state had plow drivers sitting since 4 p.m. that day. We called our guys in for 4 hours. So, you see a lot more, and keeping a lot of those complaints were probably on the state roads because they're running down Market Street with six plows down to the ground. There's no snow at that point.
Yeah.
So, but obviously with the cost of salt this year, that again, salt has doubled since my year one. We were essentially paying under $40 a ton. We're paying 70 something a ton right now. So that's a lot. And then, right now we've tentatively used a small amount of that money for, equipment upgrades, to try to be proactive on that, maybe a plow and a sander to add into the fleet. And then, also keep in mind too, any of the potholes that are caused by those snows, are done under that snow and ice. So if you have an ice storm slash rainstorm slash snowstorm, one of those, obviously potholes the next 2 or 3 days, which Massachusetts is obviously famous for. So you have 2 or 3 days of pothole work at $5,000 a day, doing that work. So there's an extra $15,000 a week if you're doing 3 days. So it all adds up. So even when you think you have a mild winter where we had under 15 inches of total precipitation, it's still, you're still using your snow and ice budget. So,
Yep.
and Rockland obviously, even, pre my administration, always has done an excellent job of the road. So obviously, we have an obligation to keep that up, so.
You got a reputation to protect. You guys are always considered.
Right.
And like you said, in the prior administration as well, you guys have
Yeah,
always done a great
it's
job.
always been
You've always been the best community around, so.
And on that too, we don't have any accidents, contributed to that. We're usually very proactive. We're all about pre-treating,
Yep.
and it's the crews. It's the crews in the office, as the admins, and then also the crews that are out on the street. So you're only good as the people that are around you, so.
Yep.
So right now, we have $250,000 plugged in the special town meeting to cover the snow and ice deficit. We'll get the exact number before we publish the warrant.
Yeah.
But it should be hopefully around that number.
It's pretty close to that. We're finishing up the numbers right now. So obviously there's still some slips coming in, whether it's asphalt work or miscellaneous. But I mean, the pro of this is like we stocked up significantly on equipment, anything that we need to replace during a storm. Like we don't have to buy a thing next year. Our barn is 3/4 full with salt. We're in a very good spot to start the next year. So, very good. So, that's the plus. So.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions?
No,
Dave?
just thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, Dave. Have a great night.
All right,
Appreciate
thank
it.
you.
Thanks for coming back.
All right, thanks.
Doug, anything else on the warrant? You good?
That's it.
Okay. Anybody else, any comments, questions about the warrant?
Nope.
Okay, we're good. Moving on. Next on the agenda, Rockland Boards, Committees, and Commissions Handbook, January 2017 discussion. So I sent out, obviously, we talked about it at the last meeting, what the goal was to look at the draft that I gave you guys from MMA conference. So I redlined some, and I think they got that to you guys this morning. I don't know if you guys had a chance to take a look at it. There wasn't a lot of language to change. Most of it was just changing the name of the town. There was a section that I did take out. The section that I crossed out completely was a section where it said that members shall communicate directly with the town administrator, assistant town administrator, and not with department heads or employees on matters including town business. We're set up as a town administrator, an assistant town administrator, not a town manager, so I didn't think it was appropriate that we not be able to speak to the department heads, so I left that. I took that line out, that we can speak to the department heads or the employees on matters. However, I did, weave in the parts where, the expectation at that point is to communicate what we find to the town administrator, the assistant town administrator, and then, take action as a team. So, I don't know if there's anything else anybody else has seen.
I had a couple things. On page 8 of the handbook.
I didn't go back into the handbook itself.
You didn't? Oh, you didn't?
Yeah, no, I
Okay.
just did the red lines on the,
Yeah. No,
the
I
town
saw
of
that.
Auburn one.
Right.
So this was the handbook that we've been operating under for, since
okay.
2017.
Yep. Okay.
So what was the question on page 8?
So, it's an open meeting law thing, when they describe the deliberation of open meeting law, it's just a very small thing. They said it includes email communication. Should we include also text communication with that?
Maybe just say electronic communication?
Yep.
Does that make sense, Doug?
It does.
Yep.
Donna, you drafted this, does that make sense? Electronic communication, to change from email, seeing as texting has become so prevalent?
Mm-hmm. And on page 10, when it talks about meeting schedule, can we add bi-weekly to that? And we had, it has every other form of.
It's not necessarily bi-weekly though, because then we go the first and the third, but sometimes it's 5 weeks.
Okay.
So
Alright.
if we change it to bi-weekly, then we
Well,
get
it-
3 times out of the month if there's 5 weeks in that month.
Okay.
you know.
All right. That's fine. Okay. That's it. Yeah,
Okay.
and I think your changes are good. Otherwise.
So what I'd like to do is, you guys have this copy, take a look at it. I redlined everything. I want to put it on the next agenda to try to vote it in if we can. All right?
Yep.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Any questions, comments on that? Anybody else? We good? All right, moving on. Other old business not reasonably anticipated?
I have none.
Okay. Town administrators report and correspondence. Doug?
Thanks, Mike. I'll be quick. I just have 4 things to mention. The first, I know a lot of boards and committees and the public has been asking about the scheduled expiration of the authorization for remote meetings, sort of like we had tonight. Currently, it's set to expire at the end of this month on the 31st. I want to thank, in particular, Senator Keenan. He's co-sponsored a bill that would make this flexibility permanent, so I want to thank him for that. If folks read about this bill that's pending, it also talks about holding town meetings remotely or via hybrid, but that would not apply to Rockland. That's only for representative town meetings. We do not have the representative form of town meeting. We're open town meeting, so wanted to highlight that. So this Senate bill, Bill number 2011, it's been referred to the Joint Committee on State Administration and Regulatory Oversight. They've not yet scheduled a public hearing date, so that won't happen in time before this expiration. But I'm told from Senator Keenan's office that there's a provision in a supplemental budget that would do another 2-year extension. So they're going right down to the wire, but it looks like we should get an extension for 2 years, and then during that time, hopefully there'll be a permanent solution. So that'll be good. And again, you know, most boards are meeting in person like you are, but there are times when a remote hybrid option is really helpful. And in particular, we have an issue, I think it's next week, where one of our committees needs to meet, and literally every single room is booked, so they're going to meet remotely. So it is really helpful. 3 other quick ones. One is we have finally got the fully executed conservation restriction back from the state for the McCarthy Farm. So it's fully executed. And it has been recorded at the Plymouth County Registry of Deeds along with a plan, so that restriction is now, you know, in perpetuity recorded at the registry, so that is an important milestone. Next, I wanted to mention, I did do the television interview with Water Superintendent Crystal Cameron. I think it went fairly well. We got a lot of views, I know that, so hopefully that information has been helpful for folks. It's on the WRPS YouTube channel, and it's also on our Facebook page. The entire video is up there. So I will be doing more videos with other topics, and I'll reach out to some of the board members here, as some of you may have an interest in participating in some of those. And then lastly, as I've mentioned earlier, I'm working with the financial department heads on finalizing formal financial policies. I'd like to be able to get them to you in April if possible. We've just been busy with the budget and the warrant, but hopefully I can get you something in April. That's all I have.
Okay. Thank you, Doug. Selectmen's comments. Comments and opinions expressed by individual members do not necessarily reflect the views of the Board of Selectmen. The opinions and comments of only the individual member. Selectperson Childs.
Yeah, I just wanted to give a shout out to the Recreation Department for 2 programs that they did recently that are really cool. The Poetry Slam and the Art Unboxed. So this year sometime we should have some artwork on all the electrical boxes in town. And the Poetry Slam is just a really cool, fantastic thing. So that's another way the community can get together to move things forward. So that's it.
Thank you, Lori. Selectperson Shortall.
I don't have anything tonight.
You're good. Selectperson Needham.
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Vice Chairman Hyman.
I just want to thank all those who organized the first annual Blarney Brunch, especially our chairman, Michael Rockland, Mike Mullen, Dan Biggins, Pam Murphy were pretty instrumental in this. Doug was there, as well as a number of my colleagues. It was a fun community event, and just want to say thank you to all who organized it.
Thank you very much.
Looking forward to next year.
Yeah, we'll be back. Thank you, Kara. So for myself, I attended the Union Point meeting last week of the SRA board, and it was the development plan from the developers, the new developers at Union Point, the master developer, presented what their plan was for the town of Rockland. And I'm not sure, I mean, you might hear some different things out there in the public, but I left there and I thought, two things. I was optimistic, for one, and patient. Patience is what's needed. I got up and made the point that this master developer hasn't screwed anybody over. They haven't done anything, out of the ordinary to generate mistrust that seems to be out there in the public. This SRA board, likewise, they haven't done anything to generate mistrust. These are the people that were put together to solve the problems that we've had at this development for the last 25 years. The things that the developers spoke about is that infrastructure is obviously a major issue, but they won't develop anything unless they have that infrastructure in place. That's their goal. I said to people, obviously, trust but verify, and we'll continue to attend the meetings and hold them accountable and have the conversations with members of the board and with members of the development team. But there's no reason at this point not to take them at the word that they're giving us right now. And I'll say the stuff that they have planned for Rockland, I know the Open Space Committee was extremely excited as they were leaving the meeting because they pretty much got what they were looking for, and all the national heritage habitats were protected in this plan from the master developers. So it's been a long project to this point, 25 years at this point, and I think they projected that if all goes well through different town meetings to approve the zoning, then they're projecting maybe another 10 to 13 years before the project is completely finished. So, I mean, that's a long time for a project to run, 38 years, but that's why I said patience. Patience is what we got to go with. So, so with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.